So today I want to make a video on this Shaker 1000 subwoofer that I got secondhand and installed in the car, um, and it worked great. But then after a month or so, I noticed that my car battery was dead, and I read online, and there were quite a few cases where the amplifiers blew out or had something happen internally where they were constantly on and draining the battery. So I verified that, um, and disconnected them, recharged the battery, and it lasted fine. And then when I had this hooked up, it was draining the battery. So I went to look for replacement amplifiers, and you can find these things on eBay, but they're like anywhere between $40 and $60, and I didn't want to pay that much. So there's four of these, at least in the 2005 to 2009, and one of these amplifiers goes to each voice coil. There's two 10-inch subwoofers in there, dual voice coil subwoofers. And so each voice coil has an amplifier like this. So I determined through checking that one of them was bad, but that was enough to kill the battery. So then I was like, well, since I don't want to do that, what am I going to do with this thing? So it's like, well, it's like this is, and I wanted to keep it because I like, it's out of the way. Not that there's a lot of trunk space, but at least it's sitting out of the way, and it has a bracket. Everything works. So I was like, what do I do with this? And then I was like, well, why can't we just treat this thing as a regular dual subwoofer box and know that it's got 8 wires coming out of it, because two go to each voice coil, and there's four of them, and then hook it up so that I can hook up hook it up to a regular amplifier. So that's what I did. So then I just want to show you what I did. So I loosened the bolts here, and let's get this out here. This is what you've got coming out of here. You know, like I said, one amplifier for each of these wires, and the wires end up going to the voice coil. And what I wired it up internally to come up with, I believe, 4 ohms total, or 8 ohms, and then hooked up the final two so that I can use this amp. So I just bought a cheap amp. You probably would want a much bigger one. And then I was like, why can't I just bolt it onto the frame where all these other amplifiers were? And if you've never seen a shaker, these mount right here, and then two on the back side. And I was like, well, why can't I just mount my amp to that, and it'll have a nice place, and then use the subwoofer. All right, I'm not going to get into the details of what I did in here, but I had to rewire it so that the output uh, from here is 2 8 ohms, and then I will have them going to the same bridged output, so it's 4 ohms uh, that the amp sees. And then you wire your amp like normal. So I brought the power and the ground and the remote turn on, which is right here. The power, ground, remote turn on from the front, and then the low level input, like you see here. And hooked it up, and it works just fine this way. So if you have a bigger, better amp, you can really, I mean, you can really get some good bass out of this, and I think it sounds just as good as when I had it with the stock amps. But you really can use any amplifier as long as you hook it up right, hook this up right, and you treat it just like any other subwoofer. Look at the ohms for the speakers and then determine what your amplifier can handle and wire it up so that that's what it sees. And so you don't have to throw this whole thing away. You can use, if the amps break, if the original amps break, you can use the same box, rewire the box. You can use the cage that the old amplifiers were on and put your new amplifier on there on this side or the other side, and then put everything back, and no one will know any different, and you should not have any issues with your battery dying. And I'm sure it ends up being much cheaper. So that's all I wanted to show today, something that I had to do with the Shaker 1000 in this car.